The desert air shimmered above the concrete expanse of Fort Resolute, a joint NATO base buried in the harsh dust of northern Oman. The sun was relentless, pressing down on metal and flesh alike until everything reeked of heat. Rows of armored vehicles lined the motor pool, their engines cooling after the morning's patrols. Soldiers moved in squads, shouting cadence, rifles slung across their backs. The constant rhythm of military life, grit, sweat, and routine. No one noticed Corporal Mara Cade. She walked between the squads with a clipboard in one hand and a water bottle in the other. Her fatigues were regulation, her boots polished, her hair tied tight under her cap. She wasn't tall, wasn't loud, wasn't remarkable. Logistics Division. That was her assignment. She carried no weapon except the sidearm that rarely left its holster. She was 31 years old and invisible. Or she would have been, if not for the tattoo. A dark, spiraling falcon spread its wings across the inside of her left forearm, inked in sharp, almost geometric lines. It wasn't military standard. It wasn't anything anyone recognized. And because of that, it became a joke. "Check the falcon," one of the infantry privates muttered as she passed, nudging his buddy in the chow line. "Guess she thinks she's some kind of special ops superhero." Yeah, another snickered, but it means she delivers mail faster than anyone else on base. The laughter was easy, sharp, cruel. Mara ignored it, just like she always did. She had learned to move like smoke, never reacting, never showing her hand. She collected her meal, a tray of powdered eggs and dry toast, and sat at the far end of the dining hall, facing the wall. Alone. To most of the soldiers at Fort Resolute, she was just another clerk with a strange tattoo. But they didn't know. They couldn't know. Because the falcon wasn't a joke. It was a mark. And there was a reason she had chosen to wear it in plain sight. The heat shimmered off the tarmac as a convoy rolled through the gates of Fort Resolute. The vehicles were blacked out, heavy, silent except for the grinding of thick tires over gravel. Soldiers stopped what they were doing to watch. Everyone knew what that kind of convoy meant, special operations. They stepped out one by one, shadows in human form. Bearded, scarred, eyes hidden behind tinted shades. Gear customized, weapons clean but worn from use. Men who lived their lives on the line between war and silence. Natos elite. Operators. Mara Cade was working behind the rear supply desk when they entered. She didn't lift her head at first, just checked the paperwork in front of her, the requisition for ammunition and medical gear stamped urgent. The lead operator approached, towering, shoulders broad enough to fill the doorway. He glanced at her, then at the clipboard in her hands. "You the supply clerk?" Her tone was steady, unshaken. "I'm a logistics officer of record. Sign here." He smirked, tossing the pen back at her instead of using it. "Didn't ask for your job description." His eyes flicked to the tattoo on her arm. "What's with the bird? You and some kind of biker gang?" The younger operators chuckled. One leaned against a crate, arms crossed. "Hell, I've seen tougher ink on a college freshman." Mara remained calm, sliding the requisition form back toward them. "Sign or don't. Makes no difference to me." It would have ended there, mockery, dismissal, another day of being invisible, if not for the last man to walk in. He was older, hair graying at the temples, jaw lined with experience. Unlike the others, his presence didn't scream aggression. It whispered authority. He stopped mid-step, eyes locking on Mara's forearm. The laughter around him died instantly. For a long, heavy moment, he didn't speak. Then, in a motion that sent shock through the room, he straightened and gave a crisp, deliberate salute. The operators froze. "Commander," one of them asked, bewildered. But the older man's gaze never left Mara. Her eyes flickered, just slightly, before she returned the salute. The room was silent as stone. Then he spoke, voice low, almost reverent. "You were at Lazarus Point, weren't you?" The clipboard slipped slightly in Mara's hand before she steadied it. The name was never supposed to be spoken aloud. Not here. Not anywhere. Around them, the operators shifted uneasily, looking from the falcon tattoo to her face, suddenly unsure. For years, they'd thought Lazarus Point was a myth. But standing in front of them, in plain fatigues and quiet composure, was proof otherwise. By the time the operators left the supply depot, the base was already humming with whispers. Soldiers might not have heard the commander's words, but they had seen enough. The salute alone was enough to spread like wildfire. Nobody saluted a supply clerk first. That night in the mess hall, Mara sat alone as always, her tray untouched, eyes fixed on the far wall. She could feel the stairs crawling across her back. Conversations quieted when she passed. A few younger recruits tried to laugh it off, louder than usual. One of them, a corporal barely out of training, slapped a crude drawing on the wall near the entrance. A stick figure with a bird tattoo and the words "Birdwatcher" Cade scribbled underneath. Laughter rippled through the room, but it died just as quickly when Captain Rowan Hale walked in. The captain was respected, hardened by deployments, and not the type to waste time on jokes. He spotted the drawing, tore it down without a word, and scanned the room until his eyes landed on Mara. She didn't flinch, didn't acknowledge him, just kept eating in silence. But Hale's gaze lingered. He had been on enough black operations to recognize the look of someone who carried ghosts. Quiet didn't mean weak. Quiet meant dangerous, if you knew what to look for. "Is it true?" a sergeant whispered from another table. "That she was at Lazarus?" someone replied. "Bullshit. Lazarus Point was scrubbed from the records. Whole unit listed Kia. Then why did Commander Voss salute her?" The speculation swelled, twisting, warping, until the dining hall was more rumor than reality. Mara rose from her seat, leaving her tray half-finished. As she walked past the tables, a voice called out, "Hey, supply clerk, tell us what that falcon really means." She stopped, turned her head slightly, and looked at the man who spoke. Her eyes didn't blaze, didn't harden. They were steady, cold. "It means I'm still breathing when 23 others aren't." The room fell into silence, so absolute that the hum of the fluorescent lights seemed deafening. Without another word, Mara walked out. And for the first time, the laughter didn't follow her. Morning at Fort Resolute began with the crack of boots on pavement and the roar of Humvees rolling out for patrol. The desert wind carried grit across the compound, stinging eyes and scraping throats. Mara Cade reported to the logistics office as usual, her uniform crisp, her voice calm, her tattoo visible for all to see. But now, the air shifted when she entered her room. Soldiers didn't laugh anymore. They whispered. Some avoided her gaze altogether. By mid-morning, Captain Rowan Hale strode into Colonel Branson's office with a scowl carved into his face. "Sir," he began, tossing a folder onto the desk. "We need to talk about Cade." Branson, a square-jawed man with 40 years in uniform, raised an eyebrow. "Cade? The clerk." "She's no clerk," Hale snapped. "Commander Voss recognized her yesterday. Saluted her. Called her Lazarus." Branson leaned back, folding his hands. "Lazarus Point is a ghost story, Captain. Classified beyond anything you or I will ever touch." "That's what I thought too, until I saw the look on Voss's face." Hale jabbed a finger at the folder. "I pulled what little I could find. Cade's file is scrubbed. No deployment history. No prior unit designations. Just gaps. And gaps that big aren't clerical errors." Branson flipped through the pages. Most of it was redacted, black bars covering entire paragraphs, entire years. One page contained nothing but a string of coordinates and a classification level stamped Black Falcon. The same word inked into her tattoo. The colonel's jaw tightened. He had seen that clearance level once before in his career, during a briefing he was never meant to hear. It was supposed to refer to an experimental joint task force. Operatives who operated below the black, deeper than covert, deeper than deniable. Ghosts without names. And now one of them was walking around his base as a corporal in logistics. "Pull her in," Branson ordered. "Now!" Minutes later, Mara stood in the colonel's office, at ease but not relaxed. Hale stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching her carefully. "Cade," Branson began, "care to explain why your file looks like it was run through a shredder?" She met his eyes without blinking. "No, sir. No. With respect, sir, if it's black class clearance, you don't have the need to know." Hale's jaw dropped at the bluntness, but Branson only stared harder. You're a corporal. Mara tilted her head slightly. On paper, the silence thickened. Branson shut the file and leaned back in his chair, studying her as if seeing her for the first time. Finally, he said, "So the rumors are true. You were at Lazarus Point." For the first time since she arrived on base, Mara's expression shifted. Just a flicker, like a shadow passing behind her eyes. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. "And if you know what that means, then you also know you shouldn't be asking me anything else." Halit slowly. He had wanted answers. Now he wasn't sure he wanted them anymore. 2 days later, a black helicopter cut across the desert sky, its blades rattling the windows of Fort Resolute as it descended onto the landing pad. Soldiers paused in their drills, shielding their eyes from the sun as the insignia came into view. NATO's Special Operations Command. No one expected visitors of that caliber. Out stepped a woman in a pressed uniform, her rank insignia glinting, Brigadier General Serena Locke. Behind her followed 2 aides in dark suits, their briefcases cuffed to their wrists. Colonel Branson was already waiting. He snapped to attention, but Locke brushed past his salute. Her stride was sharp, her eyes scanning every corner of the base like a hawk circling prey. "Where is she?" the general demanded. Branson stiffened. "Ma'am, if you mean Corporal Cade. Don't play coy with me, Colonel. I read the signal report. Commander Voss made contact. That's all I needed to hear." Word spread through the compound faster than wildfire. By the time Mara was escorted into the briefing room, half the base was buzzing with speculation. She walked in with her usual composure, boots clicking against the concrete floor, falcon tattoo catching the fluorescent light. General Locke's gaze landed on her instantly. "Cade," she said, almost like a curse. "Didn't think I'd ever see you breathing again." Mara didn't salute, didn't move. She only replied in the same calm tone she always used. Most people didn't. The aides set down their briefcases and opened them with mechanical precision. Inside were files thicker than dictionaries, all stamped with warnings in red. Top secret. Eyes only. The first page bore a single phrase. Operation Lazarus. Unaccounted personnel. 1. 24 operatives went in, Locke said, circling Mara like a predator. 23 confirmed Kia. 1 missing, presumed dead. That one shows up here, for years later, pushing paper and logistics. Tell me why I shouldn't have you disappeared for breaching protocol. The room was silent, but for the hum of the air conditioning. Hale leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching carefully. Mara finally looked up, her eyes cold and sharp. "Because if I was dead, General, you wouldn't still be running missions off intelligence. I bled to get you." Locke froze. The aides glanced at each other, uncertain. And in that instant, the balance shifted. Mara wasn't the one under questioning anymore. Locke exhaled slowly, her jaw tightening. "You think hiding here protects you? Lazarus never stays buried. If you're still breathing, then so are the ones who want you silenced." She snapped the file shut and stood tall. "This base just became a target. Whether you like it or not, you brought the war back with you." Mara didn't argue. She simply nodded once, as though she'd known all along. The mood at Fort Resolute shifted overnight. Patrol schedules doubled. Spotlights swept across the walls from dusk till dawn. Soldiers who once mocked Mara now gave her a wide berth, whispers drowned out by the tension humming in the air. Captain Hale stood at the watchtower that evening, binoculars pressed to his eyes as the desert stretched endlessly before him. Nothing but dunes, scrub, and the occasional flicker of heat mirage. Still, unease gnawed at his gut. "Sir," a private muttered beside him, "do you really think we're a target?" Hill didn't lower the binoculars. "If General Locke thinks so, we prepare as if it's already true." Down below, Mara moved through the motor pool with mechanical precision, checking vehicles, speaking quietly to mechanics, her voice never raised. She didn't look like someone preparing for war, yet there was something in the way she scanned every bolt, every crate, every shadow, like she was waiting for an inevitability no one else could see. That night, the first anomaly appeared. A drone patrol picked up static interference on the northwest sector. Cameras fizzed out for 6 minutes before returning, the feed showing nothing but sand. Engineers blamed faulty relays. But Mara was in the command tent when the report came in. She didn't speak for a long time, just stared at the frozen frame of static on the monitor. "That wasn't interference," she said finally. "That was masking." Branson frowned. "Masking? You mean somebody blinded your eyes? Tested your response time. You've got less than a week before they stop testing." Her certainty chilled the room. Later, in the mess hall, Hale cornered her. "You talk like you've seen this playbook before." Mara's gaze didn't waver. "Because I have." At Lazarus Point, Hale waited, but she said nothing else. That night, long after the base settled into uneasy quiet, Mara lay awake in her barracks bunk, staring at the ceiling. Her hand traced the falcon tattoo on her arm. From somewhere out beyond the walls, a sound drifted in. Low, metallic, almost like a distant hum. By morning, one of the outer watchtowers would stand empty, its searchlights still sweeping aimlessly, its guards missing without a trace. The alarm ripped through Fort Resolute at 3:17 hours. A siren so shrill it rattled teeth, followed by the thunder of boots pounding the ground as soldiers scrambled from their bunks. Captain Hale was first to the command tent, his radio spitting frantic reports. "Tower 3 is down. Repeat, Tower 3 is down. We've lost visual on Patrol Unit Bravo. Motion sensors along the west wall are tripping all at once. Can't isolate targets." Colonel Branson barked orders, his voice iron over the chaos. "Lock the gates. Get those Humvees running. No one breaches this compound." But in the midst of it, Mara moved differently. She didn't shout, didn't rush. She slipped through the storm like she'd lived it before, scanning screens, listening to feeds, connecting dots faster than anyone else. "They're probing your perimeter," she said flatly. "West is just noise. Real breach is coming from the south." Hale frowned, glancing at the live feeds. "South's clean. For now," Mara countered. "They'll be inside in less than 10 minutes." As if on cue, the southern cameras flickered, static then black. Seconds later, the base shuddered. A concussive blast erupted near the fuel depot, fire blooming against the desert night. Soldiers dove for cover as shrapnel rained down. "Contact south wall," came the cry over comms. Multiple hostiles, heavy ordnance. Holy hell there. The transmission cut with a crack of gunfire. Branson slammed a fist on the map table. "Mobilize everything we've got." But Mara's voice sliced through him. "No, that's what they want. You move the entire garrison south. You leave the east gate naked. That's where their main force will hit." Hale turned on her. "And how the hell do you know that?" Her eyes narrowed. "Because it's what I would do." The words hung heavy in the tent. Branson studied her, weighing the impossible. Finally, he barked, "Hale, split your men. East and south, reinforce both. If she's wrong, you'll hang me for it. If she's right." He didn't finish the sentence. Within minutes, the compound roared to life. Gunfire crackled from the south wall, tracer rounds lighting the night. Then, just as Mara predicted, shadows surged at the east gate. Vehicles cloaked in sand-colored netting, figures moving with professional precision. If Hale hadn't placed men there, the gate would have fallen in minutes. And through it all, Mara Cade stood at the heart of the storm, silent and steady, her falcon tattoo flexing as her fist clenched. She hadn't chosen this fight, but had finally found her. The eastern wall held, but the attack only grew sharper, more coordinated. Whoever commanded these forces knew Fort Resolute inside and out. Each strike probed weak points, retreating before the defenders could regroup. Colonel Branson stared grimly at the tactical map. "This isn't a raid. It's an execution." Then the comms crackled, grainy, distorted, but unmistakably deliberate. "Mara Cade, you survived Lazarus Point. Thought you could bury the past. But the past has teeth." The voice froze her where she stood. Hale glanced at her. "You know him." Her jaw clenched. "Not him. Them." The voice continued, almost mocking. "Tonight, you'll pay for what you did. Or rather, for who you left behind." The line went dead. Mara's hands trembled, just once before steadying. She didn't explain. She didn't have to. The truth was written in her silence. The assault climaxed before dawn. Dozens of hostiles surged in coordinated waves, trucks with mounted guns, drones overhead, mortars hammering every corner of the base. Fort Resolute's defenders fought like men possessed, but it was Mara who tipped the balance. She moved between squads like a phantom, adjusting fire lanes, redirecting counterstrikes, reading the enemy's patterns before they even unfolded. At the southern barricade, Hale saw it with his own eyes. Her instincts weren't guesses. They were memories. Finally, when the enemy pushed hardest at the north sector, Mara took the field herself. She stood atop the sandbags, rifle steady, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Hold your line. They bleed the same as you do. Make them remember it." The defenders roared, rallying under her command. And for the first time, the attackers faltered. As the sun broke over the horizon, the battle thinned. Smoke clung to the base like a shroud. Bodies littered the sands. Then, through the haze, one last figure appeared. Tall, armored, moving with deliberate calm. Mara froze. Hale saw the blood drain from her face. The figure removed their helmet. Scarred, eyes burning with betrayal. "Jonas," Mara whispered. The man's voice was the same one that had haunted the comms. "You left me to die at Lazarus Point. You burned the files. You erased me. And now you think you get to live?" Hale's hand tightened on his rifle, but Mara raised hers, stopping him. "This ends with me," she said quietly. The two faced off in silence, the weight of years between them. Then, without warning, Jonas raised his weapon. The duel was short, brutal, surgical. Two soldiers who knew each other's moves too well. Sand kicked up, gunfire cracked, shouts rose and fell. In the end, it was Mara who stood. Jonas lay bleeding in the dust, hate still burning in his fading eyes. "You should have left me," he rasped. Then he was still. By noon, the field was quiet. The attackers, what was left of them, had fled into the desert. Fort Resolute stood battered but unbroken. Colonel Branson approached Mara in the aftermath, his expression unreadable. "You've cost us blood, Cade. But without you, we'd have lost the whole damn fort. You're not a prisoner anymore. You're one of us." Hale nodded, exhaustion softening into respect. Whatever Lazarus Point was, you don't have to carry it alone anymore. Mara didn't answer right away. She stared out across the burning horizon, the falcon on her arm catching the light. The past hadn't died. It never would. But here, at least, she'd bought enough space to breathe. "Finally," she said, "the war's not over. But neither am I." The desert wind carried her words into silence. And for the first time in years, Mara Cade let herself believe she could fight for more than survival.